Right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Unmute Yourself. Oh, we got our sister in the building. Hey, girl.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, everybody. So I am excited to have everyone here. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Yourself. I have my cousin Angie in the building. I have Esther and I have Sandra. So I am so happy to have you guys. We will be talking about mental health in the Black community, a conversation that needs to be had. And as always, you guys already know how we do. We are doing our Zoom by round. However, in our Zoom by round, I want you guys to actually introduce yourselves so that people can know who you are, what you do, and what you specialize in. So cousin Angie, I'm gonna start with you, cousin. Let the folks know who you are and what you specialize in.
So, hi everybody. I'm Angela Hill. I'm a pharmacist, and I have to just give a plug out to FAMU. I'm a FAMU Rattler, and I spent my career as a pharmacist in community practice and varying levels of hospital. But my entire career, I've been academically associated between Florida A&M University and now the University of South Florida, or Tenacious College of Pharmacy. I'm currently a full professor and associate dean of clinical affairs. So outside of my administrative duties, I actually specialize in psychiatry, neurology, predominantly with geriatric patients, but I've worked across the spectrum over the years in mental health hospitals, behavioral health units, consulting work, fact teams, and things of that nature. And so certainly we know mental health coexists with most medical disorders. And so it's certainly a pleasure to be here and definitely get a chance to share, with along with the other ladies.
Yes, Esther, tell the folks who you are and what do you specialize in.
Hello, my name is Esther. I am a counselor at the state of Houston. I work with adult probation, and we work with individuals to help them, not go back to jail or go back to probation. And so we work on their mental health. I also am a therapist that I have my personal clients. So I work with individuals with mental health. I specialize in, depression, anxiety, basically any mental health issue. I work with clients with different mental health issues. And I believe that that's the only question. So,
So you good. You
yeah,
good.
oh my God.
You good.
Thank
Lysandra,
you.
no, you're welcome. Lysandra says, let the folks know who you are and what you specialize in.
Absolutely. So I'm Lysandra Hutchinson, and I work in domestic violence. I worked in the domestic violence field for about nearly 20 years since I was a teenager, and I provide domestic violence advocacy and education. I also am the founder and CEO of Grace and Grief. I started this organization a few weeks after I lost my husband at the age of 35. And it's a YouTube channel. It's an online community. We have an annual conference called the Rebirth Conference. And the purpose of the organization is to help those that are grieving learn how to grow through grief and to live boldly after loss.
So y'all see, hey, look, little sister done came through for y'all. Okay, I got him in all areas. Okay, all areas. So, listen, I am super excited, you guys. So let's get to the first question. And Esther, I'm gonna start with you, sis. What causes someone to start having mental health problems? Because we just hear like, oh, mental health, mental illness, but what actually can cause it? So what causes someone to start having mental health problems?
I don't think there's a one answer to this question. I believe that there's multiple reasons why people can start having mental health issues. It could be from, even from stress from work that could cause mental health, or even losing a loved one, like you just said, or a situation happens, or trauma, or they've been something happened in their past and they never dealt with it and it came back up. So I don't think there's a specific, cause of mental health. It's just when something happened, a situation, a problem, it's just not having the tools to deal with it or the guidance to deal with it, and that creates symptoms that creates mental health. It could be even depression, or even anxiety is just can be you anxious for a test, and that can create panic attacks and anxiety. So there's always a broad different reasons of why people have mental health issues, but it's not it can be mild to moderate depending on the situation.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Lysandra says, same question. What causes someone to start having mental health problems in your opinion?
Yeah, I would say, similarly to what Esther shared, usually I think it's undealt with trauma, and people that do not, or undealt with issues and anxiety, when we don't have, again, like what she mentioned, the tools. We just don't have the tools to learn how to process pain, process loss, process trauma, or we don't have that support. People then have cumulative issues, I think, as well, that just build up over time. One of the things I share through Grace and Grief is the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And just about how a lot of times the body is processing and holding on to traumatic experiences as well. And so when we don't know how to release them and don't know how to get them out of us, we're just building up over time.
I like that, sis. I don't have to get the book, huh? That's no, seriously, I think that's good. Cousin Angie, the same thing, in your opinion, what causes someone to start having mental health problems?
Well, I think they hit it right on the mark in terms of life's experiences. I think from most time a scientific background, and particularly being a pharmacist, to justify the use of medications, there's definitely data suggesting that we actually have physiological changes in some of the, neurochemicals and neurotransmitters that actually allow us to be happy, be sad, or have delusions and hallucinations or experience anxiety. And so I would say that they've already said it. It can be triggered by life events. And in some cases, you have some disorders that are inherited, genetically. Some of them are consequent to lifestyle, and so, Lysandra commented on coping mechanisms, being a key part as to why some of us are a little bit more vulnerable, than others. And so I was just so excited about tonight because in the Black community, mental illness really is almost a taboo subject. And a lot of people don't embrace it as something real. And I do think that we need to realize that our holistic self, is reflective of both our physical being, our mental being, our spiritual being, or that soul part of us. And it's definitely mental illness could be a sign that the brain is diseased, again, influenced by stress and life, but that there's an imbalance, in all of those three areas, are parts of ourselves. And so in that regard, some people have that coping mechanism and can bounce back. Some people, never do. And then certain things happen and the brain just lets us know in its own way that there's something wrong.
Got you. I think leading into that, Esther, and I start with you as well, says that in the Black community it can be taboo, and I believe that we all know the different circumstances that cause the Black community to be in a stressful state, the from the beginning of slavery and so forth, and generational. However, why do you think the Black community struggle with getting assistance for their mental health?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One, the first thing is that people think that therapists are crazy people. And so I'm like, I saw a therapist. I'm not crazy, but
Mhm.
but no, I do believe that people think that this is for crazy people, but it's not for crazy people. People are not crazy. People just go through things. They need guidance and they need help. It's just like you being sick and going to the doctor does not make you weak or anything. It just makes you're sick right now and you just need the help. And this is the people that are equipped to help you in this area. And that's the only thing. And so I think that's the first in the Black community is that people are crazy that go to therapy. Another thing is the cost. I know therapy can be costly, and you need insurance to pay a good therapy. And most of the Black community do not have maybe a good insurance or things that they don't offer in their jobs, but there are low expensive therapies right now. You can go to Psychology Today, which I am also registered on, that offer low cost, affordable therapy. And most of all my clients are Black right now. So most people go to that market to get a low affordable therapy. And another one that I can think of is that people think of therapists as maybe superior, or they feel like that they will tell their business or judge them. But we're here to not judge. We're here to, you can say anything you want. That is not, it's not for us to tell you don't do this, do this. That's not our job. And if you have a therapist that does that, you don't need that therapist. We are meant to, by state, hold confidentiality. We cannot talk about things that you say, except for if you want to commit suicide or homicide. We have to disclose that, or if the court, mandates us to. But for the most part, which I've never had the issue of that, for the most part, it's kept secret and it's kept in confidential. And so I think those are most of the top three that I've heard, Black people talk about why they don't seek therapy. And then
Yeah.
Black men, also feel like it's weak, something weak. They should not be, they should be strong and hold their own and know what to do. And talking to somebody, that's not me. That's, that's some female stuff. But
Yeah.
and I've had, Black men say that to me. And so I tell them that talking about issues that you're going through is not weak. It's actually going to help you build you stronger. And even if I tell them, even if you don't see a female counselor, you can find Black male counselors now too that can help you build you up and build that manly, guidance that you need. So I think those are the most common ones that I've heard and I have discussed with in the Black community when I talk about therapy with the Black community.
No, that's good, sis. And sis Lysandra, I'm gonna start with you as well, sis, because you deal with grief. And I think a lot of times within the Black community, we deal with a lot of grief. We deal with a lot of, you talking about, from police brutality to gang violence. People think that is just normal. Oh, my cousin got shot, and or my daughter got shot in the head. You talking about the violence in Chicago. You talk about even down here in Florida, Miami, things get worse.
Yeah.
So, why do you think the Black community struggle with getting assistance for their mental health? And especially if you can talk about that grief part.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with Esther in the sense of some of it is just this stigma or this expectation that we're supposed to be strong. We're just supposed to be strong and resilient and relentless. And we pride ourselves to some extent on, the whole idea of strong Black woman, strong Black man. And that is great because we are strong. But what happens is we don't see vulnerability as strength. We don't see the reality that being vulnerable is a strength. Being vulnerable takes courage. and we can be strong and resilient and also vulnerable and admit we need help at the same time, and one does not diminish the reality of the other one. And
Exactly.
so I think the whole mindset, there's a whole paradigm shift that needs to happen, where we reprocess how we see these things. Another thing too is there's something called disenfranchised grief. And that's grief that people go through that's socially taboo, that usually there is no wide range of help. For example, my husband passed away. That's not disenfranchised. That's socially acceptable grief. But disenfranchised grief is loss experience because of domestic violence, because of someone got shot that was in a gang, because of poverty, growing up with poverty, the shame, the weight, the struggle, discrimination, just all kinds of things that we don't divorce. There's a trauma and a grief connected to divorce that a lot of people are not going to empathize with you. Betrayal trauma, being cheated on, being lied to, adultery, all of these things lead to trauma and grief, in a form of grief that's disenfranchised. And so I think there's shame connected to that, and people don't want to talk about it, don't want to discuss it, or maybe minimize even the impact.
No, so I think that's wonderful, because I can't wait to have an episode just about grief, y'all, because
Yeah.
grief. But but cousin Angie, to you, because you deal with the medicine part of it, and you already know that we be scared to take anything, so we be like, we ain't doing that, we ain't even doing that, so we be scared to do all these different things already. And so if you can talk about that, because if you have cancer, you go to chemo, you go to your place, so it's no different for your mental health. So if you can attack that area of why do you think the Black community struggle with getting assistance for their mental health?
Well, I think it's conditioning. We've not only been conditioned to be strong, but we've also been conditioned to think that, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with going to church, but finding our peace through church and church alone, and not realizing that that definitely will help us in a spiritual sense. But the coping mechanisms that you get from counseling typically aren't taught from the pulpit. The reflection that sometimes some of us need to realize the source of our problems won't happen all the time coming from a sermon only. And so the other thing about the African American community especially is we don't want people in our business. We rather internalize and pretend and put on the show that everything is okay, because we do not want anyone to know that anything is wrong. And that goes back into some of the comments the lady said about how men process it differently than women. And some of it is the role expectations that have been just put on us as a people. And then certainly, within our families, the gender roles and all. And then we end up internalizing it so much. And so we internalize or we express it, and it's more acceptable to grab a cigarette or grab alcohol or get into using illicit drugs. And really that's a form of self-treatment, trying to find some pacification and peace, but there's a lot of denial. But it all goes back to, unfortunately, Black people also not trusting the health system. And so unfortunately, counselors get thrown into that as well. And that goes back to the syphilis experiment, and Henrietta Lacks stories, and the countless stories that have been told where we have been treated unequally, unfairly, never gotten truly quality care. And so there's some trust issues that really need to be torn down, and those barriers need to be broken, so that we have a level And then, as I would imagine Esther probably experiences and Lysandra probably experiences, you just don't see or oftentimes have access to people who look like you. So that compounds some of the trust issues, or they're younger than you, or they just can't relate to your life. And so there's a sense of cultural competency, so to speak, that is also necessary for people to feel comfortable opening up and sharing. And I think the African American community, unfortunately, because we've been so marginalized so much, it's just really a struggle. It's really a struggle.
Can I add to that just real
That's
quick?
why I'll mute myself. Y'all add on.
I'm
Right,
adding
It's
that.
Esther,
Sandra,
right.
then Esther. I got you.
Okay.
Y'all go ahead. Add on.
There's another, I think, there's another cultural aspect to honor and loyalty, because we don't want to dishonor, Big Mama or Medea, who worked
Yep.
hard, and we know they worked hard, and we know they sacrificed. We don't want to say, but they also were emotionally abusive, or they also physically abusive, and I'm still suffering the impact of that. We don't want to dishonor anybody's name. We don't want to say daddy who provided, and he wasn't shiftless, he was on top of his work and effort. We don't want to say, okay, but he was also abusive. We don't want to slander or bring shame to the family. There's a loyalty, especially because Black people, as African American, we've worked hard. People have had to work hard to overcome, and it's difficult. We don't want to bring a dishonor, and so I think we suffer. We rather suffer and internalize than feel as though we've disgraced. The reality is, it was complicated. Daddy was a good man, but it was complicated. Mama was a good woman, but it's complicated, and it's hard to own that.
That's good. Esther, go ahead, sis. Go ahead.
I agree with everything. Like it's perfect. I agree. I think some other things that I would add on is that most of the time we don't want to deal with our feelings too, and a lot of the times, I mean, I know as a counselor, I challenge my clients and dealing with their emotions and having to communicate their emotions with people, like you said, Big Mama, granddaddy. If they've hurt you, you have to communicate that. And so sometimes, Black people are not ready for that conversation, or not trying to have that conversation. And it's important that you do, because you need to, in order to heal, you have to have this conversation. I also think that, like, the TV represents us in a bad way most of the time. Therapists are not what you see on the TV. Most of the time, I haven't seen the accurate ones since now. Ayana, or Ayana, she's not a therapist. She is not a therapist. I'm sorry. I love her, but she's not the example of what a therapist look like. So I think that there's different kinds, of course, personality wise, but we're not one that we just sit on the couch and you have to sit on the couch and it's different personality. I know I bring my personality, my goofiness to my therapy experience, and my clients love that, and I connect with them on that. So, and there's different variety now. I'm glad that Black people are rising up and being therapists, being doctors, and being all these great things. So there are Black therapists, there are Black men therapists. I'm in a group called Black Mental Health Therapists, and there are Black men that are on there that are always talking about it. So you can literally find a therapist that can fit you. You don't have to have, I know sometimes they're worried that, you have a Caucasian therapist. No, you can really have a Black therapist if you want, and a Black man if you want, or Black woman if you want. So there's options now. And so just knowing that there's options can also help out with that.
No, listen here. I am happy. I am happy. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Dialogue, people. Dialogue. But no, what one thing that I did strategically was I did a show for women when queens gather together about who gives the Black woman permission to be vulnerable, and then I did another episode after that on who gives the Black man permission to feel, which stems from a poem that Preston Perry did, um, about that he did, that was just beautifully like written, and I love that poem. I pray that every Black man look at that poem, like listen to that poem. And one of the things that he said was a lot of times people associate, especially Christians, that we say like if you need therapy, we're articulating that Jesus is not enough, and that's not what it means. And so that is one thing I hope people hear, that if someone is saying that you need therapy, is not saying that Jesus is not enough, but it's just saying that maybe you need to use one of Jesus' tools to assist in making you whole. Go ahead, Esther. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna add on. I like that because I have accepted my call into ministry, so I know the ministry side, and I do offer faith-based counseling to my personal clients. Yeah. But I do love to stick to the natural remedies because it's just, again, Jesus heals the sick, and we can pray and get healing, but you still can go to the doctor and get the treatments that you need to get when you're sick. So it's just like that. Yes, Jesus is there. You can pray, but he also gave you guys this natural remedy, a therapist, and that you can seek and use as a tool to help you too. So there's nothing wrong. I'm an advocate for Jesus and therapy. So there's nothing wrong with both. They actually make a perfect fit and makes it even much better for you. So I love it, and
no, cousin Angie. Look, I think Lysandra raised her hand, cousin Angie. Then you take off. Go ahead, sis.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. That's why I love that apparel, God Plus Therapy. I love it. I don't have my shirt yet, but I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get a lot of.
Give me the link, girl.
Yes, I'm gonna see you link. We're gonna have to rock it because I love the statement of that. It's God plus therapy. It's God. He himself. He said he's a wonderful counselor. So he is a counselor, but he has anointed people to counsel. There is an anointing. I have been to a therapist who had a word of knowledge. They had the clinical and they had the anointing. They had a word of wisdom joined together with clinical understanding, and that is powerful. I tell people through Grace and Grief, do you understand how much time that's going to save you? Mm-hmm. Instead of mulling over this for 5 years, one word, you can have a couple sessions sometimes that will accelerate the process of healing dramatically because you're given the wisdom, you're given the tools, and you're given the support from somebody that is trained, a licensed professional counselor. It makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Yes. Cousin Angie, go forth.
Well, what I was just going to add, I certainly want to make sure I don't offend the faith-based community at all. That wasn't my intent. I do think that a lot of times people are broken spiritually, and they do need what the church offers, and they do need the comfort of being in the audience, so to speak, and just listening and absorbing. But I think the one thing that counseling does offer is an opportunity to get it out. And say it out loud. And that's the piece that doesn't happen oftentimes when we just look at one choice. Now, I'm a pharmacist, so I'm always thinking, and I deal with older patients who are taking 15, 20, 30 medications. So combination therapy for depression, anxiety, any kind of mental health disorder is very commonplace. So what we're saying, I think, collectively is that there is a role for counseling oftentimes when we do nothing else. And counseling does have different forms too. And I think the church has always been that foundation for us as a people. It always has, but sometimes you need to talk, and talking to your pastor gets back to what I said about you may not want your pastor to know everything that's going on. You may not want your deacon to know everything, and or you might just be, like I said, pacified and just going to church, and the socialization of being involved in that and feeling the energy that takes place. And now we can't even do that with the pandemic to a certain degree. So a lot of, we have to think about just having as many approaches and angles to healing ourselves holistically as we can. So I don't want anyone to abandon what the church can and does and has done for us. It has been our saving grace as a people when nothing else mattered. And so back to Esther's point about the cost of it, things have changed. So cost and access to people and all that stuff, now it's a different ball game. And the you just have a lot of choices and options, and counseling needs to be one of those things in the toolbox when mental health is at stake.
Well, I just feel like y'all just taking us to church this evening at nighttime, and I appreciate it so much. But Esther, I think since one of the things uh one of my homegirls, she mentioned something last year that I didn't know the term of, which was trauma bond. And I was like, trauma bond. I was like, I major in counseling. I was like, well, now I didn't hear that term, right? So what is trauma bond? Because I don't think that in the Black community we take our trauma, I don't think we know how much our trauma really affect us. Like with even with just PTSD, people think that that's just associated with the
Mhm.
army and military, not even knowing it's in your everyday neighborhood,
Mhm.
of what you see and how you view things. So what is trauma bond? And if you want, you can talk about the trauma as well.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, you just basically said the definition, really. Yeah, your sentence. Yeah. Trauma bond is kind of like the you've been through a trauma, and then you have like for example, I'll give us an example. A girl was raped, at an early age. She now has a tie, kind of like a bond with that trauma that has affected her to today, to today going on. So I think that most of the time, like we talked about earlier, people go through like a traumatic event or trauma, and they don't deal with it. And so it follows them into adulthood and their
Mhm.
life, and it's like a continuous thing. And I am part of this organization that just started, called Operation Trauma Free, is on Instagram. And one of the things that we posted today, was that one of the quotes that I said was, trauma can be a memory and not be a part of you anymore. So it can be a memory, something that you would never forget, but it can also be a place where it's not a part of you or controlling you anymore in your life. So we aim, I am trauma focused CBT certified. And so
Mhm.
one of the things that we do is we aim to help people deal with their trauma and what they've been through. And one of the things that we focus on is your mind, because CBT is focused on cognition. And
Mhm.
so most of the time I tell people is what you think is how you feel and how you're going to act. Because if I'm thinking I'm worthless, I'm going to feel worthless and I'm going to act in a worthless way. And so with that trauma, it infuses the mind and the thought process of a person. And so they start to feel what they're thinking. Like maybe, like I said, if they were raped, they probably think, oh, I'm worthless. Nobody's ever going to want me. Then that creates that depression and that other, symptoms that come in, and the other mental health that come in. And then that creates the behavior where I'm going to drink to, you know, down this, or I'm going to
Mhm.
smoke to down this pain, or I'm going to deal with it in different kind of ways, negative ways, just because of the thoughts based on that trauma that have never been dealt with.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I I
No,
really
you answered the
answered
question. It's
the
okay if you answer the question, sis. I promise. Lasandra, same thing says if you again, because like I said, you specialize in grief, and a lot of times the grief, we don't know how to handle the grief with the trauma. Like we think we have to neglect one for the other. So if you can talk about that, like what is trauma bond and how can trauma really affect us, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I really appreciate what Esther said. I think, especially with grief, a lot of times what I hear working with people is that they are so afraid to open up because they think like, if I let this out, there is no coming back. Like they're afraid they're going to have a breakdown. They're afraid they're going to snap, or they're going to go into so much depression they're not going to be able to work. They're not going to be able to take care of their kids. So there's a lot of fear of just dealing with it, opening up and beginning to explore it because it's so painful. They don't know that they can handle it. So I think that that is a lot of what the trauma creates, just a literal, almost like phobia of dealing with it. They're terrified to talk about whatever it is. I've also heard the phrase trauma bond used in relationships where, like, let's say somebody is a narcissist and they traumatize the other person in the relationship, or like, let's say domestic violence, they're abusive, but then they go back into a honeymoon state where they begin to be kind again, they begin to be sweet again, and so the person that experienced the trauma in the relationship feels calm, they feel happy, they feel loved, they feel cared for, and then the person does it again, they inflict the harm again, and then the person eventually lets up again, and so the bond is created because the person that is being harmed literally only feels relief when the offender is kind or goes back into a honeymoon period, and so they become bonded, they become like entrapped in this cycle of harm and abuse, and then forgiveness, and okay, we love and we accept you. And so I think often too, that's a trauma that people are experiencing and don't even know it. They minimize it, like, oh, we have ups and downs like every other couple, and not realizing, like, no, you're in a trauma bond. This is not a normal relationship. This is not how it works. And I think what happens too is we don't know what normal is. A lot of times we have no frame of reference for health. And I'm gonna go here, and they're not gonna like this. In our music, our media is not fostering good examples of what health and love and communication and mutuality and respect really are. And that's also permeating our culture.
That's good, sis. I love this. Cousin Angie, with the benediction, can you, the trauma?
They have been so poetic. I was just gonna say, I think trauma bond to me, we all know people who don't feel they're alive unless they're angry or unless they're in dysfunction or chaos, and they will create it if it's not there for them, because then they feel like their lives have purpose. And there are a lot of people out there, who are contentious and confrontational just because, and then I think, unfortunately, the people in their lives, the bond part is, dysfunction breeds dysfunction, misery likes company, all of those kind of things, and where people just almost accept that, oh, that's just how they are, and and there becomes this almost codependent, kind of relationship, and nobody is healthy or whole. But to Lysandra's point, if you've never seen it, you don't know it. And I think a lot of it is subconscious. And when you think about the trauma that we have endured as a people, I think by the time the George Floyd incident happened, all of us could say, or someone we knew said, that stuff happens all the time, right? But think about the lynchings and all of that, and we have those pictures in our mind, and it's like, again, we get conditioned that woe is us. All this bad stuff always happens to us. And so we then almost expect it and normalize it. And there's that, again, this connection to bad things. And so before you know it, you talk in a negative sense, you're pessimistic, woe is me, you think, you catastrophize stuff, and I think all of that is a part of that trauma bond, where you just almost metamorphose into this hopeless, kind of person. And whether it's trauma or not, some would argue we don't experience post-traumatic trauma. Our whole lives, are a constant repeat and a reset of variations of trauma. Yeah.
Anybody want to piggyback? I don't know.
I'll just add a little bit about what you're saying. what Angela is mentioning too caused me to think, and that's a whole nother conversation just about the idea of epigenetics. And the fact that we are carrying some DNA passed down from slavery, generations and generations of trauma that has impacted cells and DNA that we're also impacted by in our culture and from our racial background too. So yeah.
Listen, we got a lot of stuff going on. And I don't say that to be like insensitive, but it's to the point sometimes now. And I guess it's almost like a trauma where it is, if you think about it too much, it's like you live in a state of rage of everything that we have been through, the things that we have gone through, and what we even see today is not like what was done in the past don't affect us now, so I think it is you living in this state of rage, and it's like we have to do what we have to do in order to get out of that. You guys are online. I know one of my sister, Dawn, she asked a question. If you have any questions, please put it, in the comment section. They will be answering them at the end of the show. So please ask your questions, okay? This is for y'all. This is for me. This for everybody, okay? Um Esther, I wanna go through this because a lot of times people say, "Oh, I feel like I'm about to have a mental breakdown, or I'm about to have like a nervous breakdown, or I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack." Right? Are those three things tied in together, or they're like different? Like mental breakdown, nervous breakdown. What breakdown? Like, so is there a difference?
Yeah. Okay. So with a panic attack, there are symptoms. Sweaty palms. Heart. You can't breathe. Like it's a hard time for you to breathe, and there's symptoms of specific symptoms in the book we call it the DSM-5, and that's a diagnostic book that we have as counselors. So panic attack is different specifically because it has specific symptoms. Like you have to go down the list and say, okay, you do have a panic attack. You did have a panic attack or anything like that. So with nervous breakdown, there is not a specific like that in the book. So I believe that nervous breakdowns are different from panic attack, and I'm not a specialty on this, but this is my personal, opinion, is because nervous breakdown can just be working too much, and then you just have a nervous breakdown because you're stressed out. There's a lot going on. You're emotional, and that's just a nervous breakdown. But a panic attack stems from anxiety, and it's just you over worrying, over excessing about something that they has not happened, and your body is reacting to that over worrying, over anxiety that you have. And so that's more of a panic attack, or like you see, like maybe like a plane is moving and somebody has a panic. They're worried, the fear of maybe the plane will crash or things like that. It's like a fear, and it's producing in your body. But a nervous breakdown can just be, I have a stressful day at work, I'm crying, I'm having a nervous breakdown. So yes, if I have a nervous breakdown one day, does not mean I have to seek counseling. It's just something that this is stressful, I know I need to relax. When you have a panic attack continually, yes, you need to seek counseling. When you have a nervous breakdown continually, yes, you need to seek counseling to see what can help you to be stress free and not have it again. But I think that with a panic attack is more serious because your body is producing it, because it's happened so many times and the fear is a lot. But with a nervous breakdown, it might be once in a while. It just depends on how severe it is and how many times you have it, to in order for me to say you should seek counseling for that. So I don't
Gotcha.
know.
No, I got you.
Okay.
Lysandra says she wrote down the panic, the panic attack and the nervous breakdown. But a lot of times too, you hear like I feel like I'm about to have like a mental breakdown, like a crack in my mind.
Right.
What are your thoughts about that? How can somebody distinguish both, either one?
Well, I'll talk because I don't have a clinical background, so I'm just going to talk from like from a grief from
Yeah.
someone working with people that are going through grief. One of the things about grief, in terms of like anxiety attack, mental breakdown, like when are you stuck? Because grief is a whole gamut of emotions. The grief process is not linear. It is a roller coaster ride. So people think I'm having a breakdown because they're going all over the place. They're angry, then they think maybe I'm over it. Then the next thing you know, they feel depressed. Then the next thing they're sad. They're in guilt. Then all of a sudden, they're all over the place. And a lot of them, a lot of people in the grief community can mistake that for some type of unraveling, like I'm mentally coming apart, although it's normal. There is complicated grief though, which is getting stuck, like getting stuck along the way, no longer moving from thing to thing, but just getting fixated in anger, right? And that is when we usually recommend you need to seek counseling. So this is a point where it's like, you've been in anger, we can't move from anger, you are seething, you are enraged, you can't get that, move on out of that place. That is a red flag that you really, really need to see a therapist and someone that kind of help you get unstuck in the grief process, because that can then graduate to something more, to maybe clinical depression, and just what we call complicated grief.
Okay, sis. Ooh, sis, God is proud of you with this grief thing, sis. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Cousin Angie, I know, like you said, you deal with the mind and stuff. So
Mhm.
if you can talk about the mental, like feeling like a mental breakdown, because Sandra kind of broke down how that can even trigger into going to a clinical depression and so forth. But a lot of times people are talking about their problems. I feel like I'm about to have a mental breakdown.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
how would you be able to describe that, or for them to
Yeah.
know if they're having one?
Yeah. So I don't know if in all cases people know they're having a mental breakdown, but I do know that we can get to a level where we're so stressed out that we literally almost disassociate, with what's actually going on, and our ability to take care of ourselves, or even, maintain a job, maintain relationships, just is totally lost. And we all probably have encountered people where we could say something happened in their life, and since then they just weren't right, you know, just weren't right. And that speaks to something a little deeper than definitely a panic attack or what we call generalized anxiety, but definitely the brain, it's almost like something has clicked, and they have dissociated with themselves, and so they almost go into a whole nother sphere and become almost a different personality in a sense. But it is a reaction to severe stress, and in that regard, sometimes, most times, and I default to Esther to say whether how effective, counseling alone can be, and or medications, but oftentimes they end up going down this long road of mental health help, that, and you just see all kinds of things. But it's very unfortunate when we get to that point, when people, say they're stressed out, or they're having a nervous breakdown. Oftentimes they're referring to some of our more typical anxiety disorders, like anxiety in general, generalized anxiety. Post-traumatic is a type of anxiety disorder. You have social disorder, anxiety. Sometimes you have phobias and fears. And so, as all of them have already kind of been spoken to, but collective stressors can definitely lead to a nervous breakdown. But it's extreme, life circumstances oftentimes where the brain just totally, does not function, and our ability to know who we are, when we are, where we are, and how we're to act in that context certainly gets shifted a great deal.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I hope y'all learned something, because I surely did. I hope y'all learned a little bit of something, okay? But I want to get to one of the questions that Don asked you guys, and if you guys want to add on, you guys definitely can. She said, "How can we normalize mental health like dental and physical health. Hold on, Esther. Hold on. Hold on, sis. You on mute? There you go. There you go. Unmute yourself. You got it.
Like anything, it really starts with us. I mean, it really does start with each and every one of us, sharing, posting about it, encouraging. That's really the only way to spread it. Is, the Black community really standing up like this live that we're doing. It's an amazing way to broadcast how normal and normalize, a therapy in the Black community. So it's just really all of us just standing up and really normalizing it and working together to normalize it. I know I have a personal Facebook page called Let's Talk About It, and in the Facebook page I'm trying to let's talk more about mental health and get more comfortable. My goal is to do workshops and do conferences and do a lot of things to bring awareness and normalize it. So it really starts with each and every one of us. So everybody watching this live, share it, post on your status about hashtag mental health awareness, or, encourage somebody today. So it starts with you and me and you. And so, yeah.
Nah, Lysandra, cousin Angie,
Yeah.
Lysandra,
I was just gonna say, I think, like I mentioned before, just even campaigns like those T-shirts that say "God plus therapy," I feel like that's huge. Having mantras, having people in the media, music, clothes, apparel, sign, just little sayings that we say, hashtags. Like that's the way we can use media to normalize therapy. But I just agree with what Esther is saying. Just it starts with us, each one of us using our platforms, and we all have a sphere of influence, using our influence in our families, at work, in our career, at our church, to normalize therapy and encourage others to go, to admit that, okay, I go to therapy, it's been a blessing to me, it's changed my life, and then help other people, and then also have the resources to refer people to therapists, so that it's almost like we need to demystify it and make it easy and accessible, so we can know where to point people as well.
That's good.
And I think that part is so important. We've got to tell people, yes, it's okay to go, and endorse people who are courageous enough to go. And if they share with you that they went, not stigmatize them for going and trying to help themselves, but also, being a marketing, ploy. So I applaud you, Darielle, for this, because one, this is bold. A lot of people don't want to talk about, but giving people a safe haven, to have these kind of open and forward conversations is really important. But one of the things that I'm so proud of is you're seeing celebrities like Taraji B. Henson, advocate and start a foundation in her father's name. And for her to say, post-traumatic stress disorder is real, but also allowing people to get free counseling through her foundation, so that if you have that level of celebrity, admitting to it, and oftentimes we hear about, especially, our heroes and sheroes, in the Hollywood life, committing suicide and that kind of stuff. We need to embrace that is real. And this pandemic has been true to form. I mean, the numbers have been staggering. The hotlines for mental health, for crisis and suicide and just depression and all have just been off the rocket, because this quarantining and the impact on our economic lives, and the lack of socialization, and having to mask, and the fear and paranoia associated with, is COVID real, to are they trying to kill me with the vaccine? I mean, it's just, just been phenomenal how many people can relate to anxiety or stress. And one of the things we've got to get away to as a part of normalizing this is stop trying to dress it up. Working a lot with older people, they would rather say I have a nerve problem than to say I'm depressed. but we need to call it what it is. Now, oftentimes depression and anxiety coexist, but we also have to familiarize ourselves with the symptoms so we recognize. And so when we notice Uncle so and so drinking a little bit more, maybe it's because he's depressed and needs some help. And to Lassandra's point, grief manifests in so many ways. And so the loss of a job, the loss of a friend, the loss of family, the loss of your importance, even people who retire, their sense of purpose, is shifted and all. And just think of the millions of people who had loved ones in an assisted living facility and because of the pandemic couldn't even see them. Or you think of the people who lost loved ones in the hospital and they were not allowed to see them, and then they died, and all of the other things that have gone along with just this pandemic alone. And one of the things we need to say to people is it's okay. We understand because we're not alone. All of us are experiencing this simultaneously in some way or some fashion or form. And if anyone tries to pretend it has not psychologically impacted them, then those are the ones I'm really concerned about, because this has been a long year. A long year. And psychologically, this will be forever ingrained in our memory, as the thing that stopped life as we know it. And so if none of, and granted, all of us may not necessarily need to go see Esther because of the pandemic experience, but we all need to stop and think about really what this has done to us, how it's changed our lives. And certainly, we have something we can relate to in terms of having lost, and or having gained. And I know with the other thing that we have to do to normalize mental health is also stop and smell the roses and realize too how blessed we are. And sometimes we do get stuck in that trauma bond. And part of our healing is definitely forgiving ourselves and also taking better care of ourselves, holistically. So exercise is really important. Getting sleep is really important. All those things add up into normalizing what mental health is about.
Mm-hmm. Listen, cousin Angie, that thing that you said about people, if they pretending, like, let me tell you something, this pandemic done hit Chuck E. Cheese, JC Penney's, okay, it done hit pastors, okay, it done hit everybody and their mama, okay, this is okay. No, y'all can't act like it done hit Trump, it done hit Biden, it done hit everybody. You hear me?
Right.
Lord have mercy, this pandemic big ghetto, but we gonna make it through. Assistance.
Right. I just wanted to add on, like, everybody has been, sharing really good facts, and I love it. Even me personally, I saw a therapist last year, and I was a therapist seeing the therapist, so it was kind of funny. So and it's open for anybody and everybody. And I just want to talk a little bit about the process. Also, it's like, the first session is really an intake, and we get a holistic view of your life. And so then we set goals and what you want to work on. And sometimes it doesn't even have to take 6 months, a year, depending on your goal and depending on your willingness, of course, to work. It can take 3 weeks, it can take 4 weeks, it can take a month, it can take whatever is necessary to, attain the goal that you have set for yourself. So don't be scared that, I have to go to therapy for a long time, or you can either go every week, every other week. You can set the pace on how you want to go to therapy. I tell my clients, I'm like, what do you want? And so I go on, there's a lot of therapists, we call it person-centered, and we base our therapy on our clients. So it's whatever you want, we give to you. And so we're just wanted to assure y'all that first, that it's not only, like you said, it's not only y'all. I did too, so I'm a firm believer of it even as a professional, and also that the process is not scary, because I am a therapist that work with clients every day. And then lastly, there's also, like she was saying, psychology today is a good place to find therapy for the low. Like I said, I offer affordable prices for my clients. And so there are people there that offer affordable prices. And I can put that on the comment later on. Psychology Today is a good platform. But also, if you have insurance, you can call your insurance company, and what they're going to do is send you a list of therapists within your provider. And right
Mhm.
now, I believe telehealth is free for most. I'm not saying for all insurance because I'm not an insurance agent, but for most part, like Blue Cross, I know that like telehealth is free, and so and that's another option now. You know, you get to sit at your house and have therapy in your house, and we just
Mhm.
video call you and work with you.
Mhm.
So there is
Mhm.
so much options. There is no reason anymore. There's affordable, there's free cost, there's different options for you out there. So there's no reason why not to seek therapy. You can seek therapy for anything, it literally anything
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
feel like this is on me, my chest, this is what I'm feeling, I'm burdened with it, whatever it is, we don't see it as small or big. I've had clients that come to me like, oh, I'm stressed out for work. Okay, let's work on some self-care. Let's work on some coping skills
Mhm.
for your stress. Let's work on, so that it doesn't have to be something big or something major that has to happen in your life to seek therapy. It can be as small as I don't know if you see a bug and you have to seek therapy for that, not that, but it can be as small as you're stressed out from your job or you're stressed
Mhm.
out from this relationship. Yes,
Mhm.
it can be as
Mhm.
small as that. So yeah,
Mhm.
I just wanted to share.
Tammy, I think there was one more question. And the question was, how do you heal from hospital trauma, like emotions? Um, I do y'all. I think like for the hospital trauma, I think it was like if you get diagnosed with a condition, like how do you
Mhm.
deal with that?
Mhm. Yeah.
Sandra says, do you want to
Yeah.
start off with that?
Mhm.
Um, so with grace and grief, we definitely talk about loss of health, which can
Mhm.
also classify as a traumatic event for many people, especially if it comes out of
Mhm.
nowhere, or when
Mhm.
you're young, even, or if you lose like the ability to some normal function of the body. Usually, we encourage people to grieve that. There's a grief process. A lot of times, a person's whole life has to change right after a diagnosis. They may not be able to go to work. They may need a support system set up. There are the whole five stages of grief: shock, anger, acceptance. All of that has to happen in order for them to move forward. So I definitely suggest looking at that as a grief. It's a loss that you need to grieve the loss of health and then figure out how to move forward.
Uh yeah. Oh, hold on, cousin Angie. Hold on. There you go. Yep, there you go, cousin Angie. Go ahead.
I was going to say sometimes the other thing that helps, piggybacks what Lysandra said, and then what Esther is talking about, when you don't have the courage sometimes to go for counseling, and everyone is not spiritually grounded or interested in that route, but there's a lot of professional support groups out there. And particularly when people get diagnosed with certain diseases, oftentimes you'll find support groups where there are people who are experiencing the same problem, and that's another mechanism of counseling or self-help, because you have that peer support and get input from them. Then you have a lot of hotlines and other things that, particularly if you get into a crisis mode, sometimes they can kind of help talk you off the ledge, so to speak, and different things. But I do think a lot of times with some emotional, like if you lost a loved one at a hospital, or a procedure went wrong or something in that particular event, I do think the cognitive behavioral therapy that Esther offers is probably something to really help you kind of work through that. And then I have to give my plug, kind of like Esther did, as a pharmacist. I will say, medications are also there to kind of help, but they focus on correcting the neurochemical side of it, but they work best when you have things like cognitive behavioral therapies supporting and reinforcing and allowing you to get your, I call it your think talk, your brain talk aligned. So you're aware of your situation, you're able to cope, and you're not stressed out by the things that are stressing you. Because oftentimes medications, excluding, there's some exceptions, but many of them, require you have to have a lot of self-control because you're going to be committed to taking them for a while. They may take a little while to work, and sometimes the side effects that go along with them, you may or may not want to actually deal with. But I would offer that, a pharmacist is typically accessible when you can't get to, a counselor, you can't get to your doctor, you can't get to others. Oftentimes we can be a resource to help you find some of these resources we've been talking about tonight. But I do want to applaud the ladies in terms of the work that they're doing, because especially that grief piece, there is just so much of life that, falls into that bucket, and it happens so fast. Things are happening so fast. We oftentimes don't get a chance to recover from one loss before another loss of a different form or fashion kind of takes place. And unfortunately, medications don't, oftentimes help you around that curve. And counseling really, really makes a difference. So, having groups like that, I think is really important as well. Mm-hmm.
I was going to add too, I always try to, in terms of grief, we usually refer people to a support group called Grief Share. So you can find a Grief Share support group anywhere in the United States by searching using your zip code. And so it's griefshare.org. And so there's a database, and Grief Share is also free. I wanted to say also that through Grace and Grief, we also really do stress self-care, just self-care. I think we are, and Angela mentioned this, just exercise, because we cannot disintegrate the mind, the soul, and the body. They're all working together. And so we also push that. We talk about, even simple things, taking melatonin, to go to sleep, or putting the diffuser with the oil by your bed, going for a walk every morning, joining a workout class, stretching, meditation. There's trauma-informed yoga that is for people that have experienced trauma. There's yoga. You can look that up online. There's so much. So I just wanted to, and your diet, we talk about everything you're eating, all of this stuff helps alleviate stress. So it all works together. It all works together in the healing process. So I didn't want to leave that out. The other point too about the church, right? We don't talk about the fact that some people were traumatized at church. They came to church traumatized, looking for help, only to be re-traumatized and further injured in the house of God. And so I just think too, in our community, we don't always talk about that. There's a lot of shame, I think, in that experience as well. And where do you go from there? So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. And I think that also just meant, just to stress even more so why the therapy piece is important.
Yeah.
Listen to that thing. Hold on, cousin Angie. I'm gonna try to get Esther in, and then you got Esther. Hold on, sis. There you go.
No problem. Y'all want to say the answers for me, so y'all can go ahead. I do agree with both of you. I have a client that lost his mother, and I had to do grief counseling with him. And like you said, there's stages to grief, and so you work through every stage with them using CBT, and I use CBT. So incorporating those two can help out with that. So, but if you've been diagnosed with a chronic illness, there's a lot of coping skills. Like you said, meditation. I can go down a list of coping skills. Deep breathing. We work on a support system. Like we work on different coping skills. Now, not all the coping skills work for each person, but what I advise all my clients is to have I call them 5-hand coping skills. And that's your 5 skills that you always go to that you have in handy. So I work with my clients to create that 5. And so I'm like, try this. And if it doesn't work, like I know like a lot of Black people, I'm not going to lie, they don't really like meditation. Sometimes, especially in church, they say it's, not really spiritual, or they say that, I get sleepy, I get bored doing meditation. So I'm like, okay, no meditation. Let's scratch that. But sometimes it helps. I mean, I'm not diffusing meditation, okay? But I'm saying that, so what I'm saying is that sometimes some coping skills do not work for everybody. So I do not say I want you to do meditation. I'm like, you can try it, and if it doesn't work, let's go back to the coping skill board and get some coping skills and build up 5 top coping skills for you. So I will not tell you right now,
That's
this is
good.
what I recommend for you to do. So that I'm not going to say that, but I will say that there's a lot. And so that's why it's good to go to counseling if you have been diagnosed with chronic illness and need help dealing with it, so that you can work through a lot of coping skills and see what would fit you and best help you, guide you to deal with it. And so that's my recommendation for that answer, how to
That's
deal with a hospital, chronic illness, even with grief too. I mean, like you said, going to counseling does help with grief too. There are counselors that specialize in that, and then also we're trained in all of that. Like we had to go to school to work on grief counseling. We had to take classes on that and things like that. So not everybody is specialty on it. I'm not going to say it, but also that's why psychology today is important, because they tell you what they specialize in, and they tell you, oh, I'm specialized in grief, so okay, this is who will best fit with me. And what I even do before I even start with a client is do a consultation for free, and I tell them, tell me what you want to work on in like 5 minutes, and then I'm like, I can work with that, or well, I don't know how to work with that. And I'm always honest. I'm like, I don't specialize in that. I can't, like with schizo, I'm not a specialty in that. Like, I'm like, hey, like I'll refer you out, or I'll look for a help for you, but I cannot take you on because I want your money. So there's people that specializes in things that you don't have to work or look for. Just look at their specialties, and then you're like, okay, this is good fit. But yeah.
No, that's good. Angie, I know you was gonna hop on what Lasandra said, because that church wants this. Listen, I gotta invite you back for that, but that's a conversation by itself. But cousin Angie, go ahead.
Well, actually, they really kind of covered, like Esther said, we all are reading each other's minds at this point. But I just wanted to say, I think when we say exercise, people are like, eh. But one of the things that I would just remind people to do is, if we think about the things we enjoyed when we were children, I know for me, red light, green light, and skating and things like that. And now that I have a young daughter, I have a plausible excuse to go back to that and just really enjoy it, and not realize that how much exercise that really can be for you. But certainly things, just getting outside and connecting with nature, getting some vitamin D, through just sun exposure, going to the beach. I mean, living here in Florida, we have so much nature to appreciate. And I do think that walking daily, having partners to walk with, or an accountable people that'll help you. And sometimes I know my husband and we walk together, or walk alone, or walk with another couple, but doing things that you enjoy, watching movies, but rediscovering a lot of those hobbies and stuff. I think sometimes we work ourselves to death, and forget what's really, really, really important. Read a book. I mean, so there's been a couple of books that have been recommended, but movies, and unfortunately we can't go to comedy shows and hang out like we used to, but you can get everything on Amazon Prime you want, so you can catch up and binge watch on TVs and things of that nature. So I do think you need to think about exercising in a different way, and just my husband always says, object in motion stays in motion. And I think that that is not only for physical reasons, but also mental. And I promise you that if we do not realize or come to grips with mental health being a real issue for the Black American community, and we wonder why diabetes and hypertension and all these things are such chronic problems that are plaguing our population, it's because we are just not being true to our temple, that God did give us. And so we have to be true to it and be mindful, as has been said, of what we put into it and how we take care of it. And that means holistically. So if you need to burn some candles, that's aromatherapy. If it's in it, if you soak in some Epsom salt, get the lavender flavor, that's aromatherapy. That's meditation. But we just have to open our minds and think about it. This is not just for white people. We are not compromising anything by taking care of ourselves and doing some of the things that people have done for years to help themselves. Okay.
Amen. Praise God for that, man. Because let me tell y'all something. I am super excited. I can't wait to have these ladies again. Do you hear me, y'all? I think this was a beautiful episode. I felt like it was very teachable. I felt like it was very relatable. And honestly, you guys, hold on, sister. I'm gonna say that. Let's see. Have you all seen benefits in your professional opinion of CBD uses that is popular now as it relates to mental health?
I can comment on that one.
You
Yes.
go ahead, cousin. Yeah, I was about to say.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
It is. Have
Yes.
you all seen the benefits in your professional opinion of CBD uses that is popular now as it relates to mental health? And I know that cousin Angie deal with the medicine. So take off, cousin Angie.
Well, maybe you'll invite me back because that is definitely a topic that deserves a whole lot more time, and it's getting kind of late. But what I will say is that there are some ways CBD does help us in the context of coping, and then we have to be very careful about how much the source and a whole bunch of other things that CBD does to the brain, and in relation to the fact that getting it purely, again, there's ways that we need to do that, but CBD doesn't necessarily fix the problem, and in some cases, depending on how much is used, can actually worsen problems, for us. And so we have to be very careful about that. But I would love an opportunity to really,
Oh no, listen,
yeah,
cousin Angie, we about
yeah,
to listen. Grief, CBT, all of y'all get together.
yeah.
We will be doing a part two, you guys. I'm trying to strategize this thing out. I also know that in May it deals with mental health as well. So I definitely want you guys to know that we will be doing another one. Y'all already know how Unmute Yourself platform go. We are not hiding from no topic, no situation. We are really here to heal the land, okay? And I am blessed. I am full. I am thankful. Lord knows I am thankful for everybody that is a part of this. And I just want everybody to take this away with them. Jesus plus therapy is good. Jesus plus therapy is good. When you say plus, that's an addition. That is not a substitute. So it's addition, okay? We ain't saying Jesus minus therapy, okay, or therapy minus Jesus, okay? We ain't taking away from Jesus, but I do want us as a community, and as cousin Angie referred to, the Black church, the church in general has been our anchor in so many ways. But I also think that Jesus wants us to use all the gifts that we have to make our community whole. And so before I pray it out, cousin Angie, let the folks know how they can follow you and keep in touch with you. And then Lysandra, and then Esther, y'all go ahead and let the folks know how they can keep in touch. Cousin Angie.
Well, I, like all the other ladies, have a website. And so I will, how about I share that information with you, Dario, how they can get in touch with me individually. And like all the other ladies, I do consultations as it relates to medication management. But I don't mind reaching out and helping people in that regard. Thank you for letting me come tonight, too. I enjoyed it.
No problem. I'm happy. Lysandra says,
Yeah.
they can follow you, man.
Yeah, definitely. You can find me and find Grace and Grief. It's www.graceandgrief.com. Instagram and Facebook is at Grace and Grief, spelled out. And then the YouTube channel, you can search for Grace and Grief.
Sis, do you have a book out or anything?
I'm working on it, sis.
Okay, sis. I'm hold you accountable this year, sis.
Please.
I'm holding you accountable.
Please do.
Esther, sis, let the folks know how they can follow you and keep in contact.
Well, I have my Facebook page. Let's talk about it. I have not been on, so I'm working on getting back with it. I have the Instagram that I'm a part of. I'm not the main admin of that. I'm just the counselor that's helping them out. Trauma free. Project Trauma Free, sorry, on Instagram. And I am on Psychology Today as a therapist that is taking clients. And so you can search me on Psychology Today if you're seeking therapy, or anybody, on Psychology Today. And of course, my Instagram, my personal Instagram and Facebook is my name, which is, hold on.
It's right there. It's right there. I got
there.
It's right there.
My personal name is my Facebook and my Instagram, Esther Alasa. That's it.
And she's located, you guys, in Houston. So any of the listeners, the audience, she is in Houston. And as y'all already know, Unmute Yourself, we are taking donations this year because we want to actually help our community. We want to do big things, so you can cash app us, UnmuteYS. We ask for 50 cents to $1. Anything you can give in the name of the Lord, we are appreciative. Okay. But as always, you guys, please stay on as we close out in prayer. Dear Heavenly and Gracious Father, we thank you so much for your love and kindness. I thank you, Lord God, for this platform, for this conversation. I pray for the people that are watching, and I also pray for the people that do replay this, Lord God. I ask in your name that we become the identity that you died for. I ask that we become the identity that you died for, that we will become more whole, Lord God, that we can have wholeness down here on earth. I pray that we will not reflect our brokenness, but we will reflect the healing that you want us to have. And I ask, Lord God, that you continue to protect us and guide us in this pandemic. I ask that you watch over us in our individual lives. And I just pray, Lord God, for the Black community and the world as a whole. But Lord God, let people know that you with us. Let people know that you care. And most importantly, Lord God, let people know that you love them. And we say this in your precious name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Y'all, as I always say, y'all, stay positive, negative. Okay, we out. Okay, we